Welcome to the Right to Reason podcast. I'm your host, Robert Stanley. This is episode 44. We have a liberal and a conservative here ready to do battle. Kelly versus Hertzey, a political debate, starts right now.
One aspect of American U.S. life and culture that I think that does deserve respect and admiration is protection of freedom of speech. The U.S. is unique in the world in that respect.
And let me assure you that we are going to take our fight for economic justice, for social justice, for environmental sanity, for a world of peace.
Atheist liberal Hertzey Hertz of Atheist Talk Radio and Christian conservative Kelly Clemenson of the Areopagus Project are about 2 minutes away from locking horns. While they get ready, I want to read you a little article from the New York Times. Polarization is dividing American society, not just politics, by Nate Cohn. He says, according to a new study from Pew Research, Republicans and Democrats in Congress aren't the only partisans who deeply distrust people from the other side of the aisle. Liberals and conservatives prefer to associate with and live near their fellow partisans. They would be unhappy if their children married someone with a different political viewpoint. The result isn't just polarized politics, but a divided society where liberals and conservatives increasingly keep apart. What is more clearly illuminated here is the extent to which partisan and ideological animosity is dividing American society. Well, that's exactly what our two interlocutors will be discussing today. Can they find common ground, or has America already politically split too far? I expect that their differences on the topic of religion will dominate the discussion, but I also expect these two people will ultimately have a polite conversation while addressing some hot-button issues in the political arena. Let's get started.
Culture is not your friend. Culture is for other people's convenience and the convenience of various institutions, churches, companies.
We very naturally, as a cognitive and behavioral imperative, we form descriptions of the world and we try to figure out what's going on.
If you base the design of rockets on science, they reach the moon. It works. Bitches.
And it's time for a political debate with Hertzey Hertz and Kelly Clemenson. Hertzey from Atheist Talk Radio and Kelly from the Areopagus Project. Glad to have you both here. First question, Kelly, can you tell us what the Areopagus Project is?
It's comes from Acts chapter 17, starting verse 19. It's where Paul went to Athens and started having conversation with what was called the Epicureans of those days. The Epicureans were folks that basically, if you look it up, they're basically naturalists. They're really Darwinists because they didn't have a process involved, but they believe things happen just from nature. So that's why I called it. I was looking for something to name it. And I was sitting in a Bible study at my church, and he brought that up, and I said, well, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be talking to crazy atheists like I'm doing this morning. Just kidding. Just a joke.
We know.
Depending on the definition of crazy.
Okay, let's leave that aside. I don't want to get emotions stirred up already. We just started.
So your Areopagus Project is a debate forum or a discussion forum?
It's a discussion forum, yeah. As you know, I'm a street evangelist, and there's a little market night that happens out here in my neck of the woods called Redlands, and I have a booth there where I talk to folks about God and about evolution, atheism, all the rest of it. We have discussions.
What does your sign say that draws people to you? Like, do you have like a big sign?
Yeah, that's the funny thing. You should mention that, Robert, because what happens is I got stuff up, and Christians come by all the time, and they've got this funny look on their face like they're about ready to talk to an atheist, because my signs, they all have they have stuff about evolution on them. They have a quote from what's his name, Salam, about the universe. And when they come by, they like have a question look on where I'm getting it from, because if you come by, you would not from first look know that I was a Christian. You wouldn't know that. And it's bait. I throw bait out for you guys so you can come and I can you in. So that's what happens. I'll send you a picture. I
would love to see that. Yeah.
I think it's got a couple pictures on my website. But anyway, yeah, that's what That's what the ministry's about.
And what's that website that they can find all that?
It's www.areopagisproject.com. And that's a hard word to spell, but if you look online on Facebook, I put it there all the time, so you'll see it in my discussion panels. I'll go on to Robert's website and list it there so you guys can go on and take a look. There's some funny stuff on there. It's not all you guys that are not into the Christian thing. There's some funny stuff on there that I think you'll enjoy. Look for the twins. They're pretty entertaining. I think, Robert, you watched.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Hertzey, you're like a real radio professional here to show Kelly and I how to do things right. So you're from Atheist Talk Radio. Can you tell us what you guys get into there and how people can find you?
Absolutely, but we do have to stretch the term professional here. I am not paid, but I am my coworker Maddie, or I guess cohort Maddie, calls me the executive producer, so I'll just take the title of Atheist Talk. We are on the radio on Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. on KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
You sound so radio-like. That was cool.
Wow.
I've done it a few times. The show itself has actually been on the radio for about 10 years, and I've only been the producer for a little over a year. But we talk about interesting things that atheists might find interesting. We have guests and such on, and that's really about it.
Fantastic. Well, I'm happy to have you both here. The idea here was to have a discussion about politics between a Christian and an atheist. So all the questions are formulated as a Christian would ask an atheist, or vice versa, concerning the political climate that we're in. We're going to do 15 minutes per question. There will be 2 questions from the liberal to the conservative, which would be atheist to the Christian in this scenario. 2 questions from the conservative to the liberal. And for each question, for each of the 4 questions, there will be a 15-minute discussion time where they just get to talk about it. So it's not going to be any kind of Oxford-style stuffy debate here. It's just 2 people hashing stuff out. I will be playing moderator for the only purpose of keeping track of the time, reviewing the questions. If we start to get off topic, I'll try to direct us back that way and just kind of facilitate the conversation. If anyone were to, which with these 2 folks, it's not likely to happen because everybody knows them from previous episodes and you guys know they're very polite. But if somebody were to dominate the conversation and try to talk over the other person, I might jump in and say, okay, guys, let's remember we're trying to have a polite discussion or something like that. But essentially, I'll let you guys know when you get to the 10-minute mark, and I'll go ahead and stop the conversation when you get to the 15. So if we're still talking about Kim Jong-un's nukes and it's 15 minutes, we're going to have to stop and just start without any kind of segue, get right into the next question, because that's the rules.
So we'll just drop the nukes.
We will drop the nukes, yeah. Oh. All right, so here are the questions in their entirety. I'm going to do the conservative questions to the liberal, and then the liberal questions to the conservatives, just so the audience can know what to expect. Question number 1 on abortion. Why is this genocide allowed? So right off the bat, we're describing abortion as genocide in that one. Kelly's question, second question to Hertzey, is going to be, from a political perspective, where do you get your morals? As far as the liberal questions, we have, how are Christians able to throw themselves, in the political sense, behind those who are morally corrupt? All right, so that one's going to be like the Roy Moore or the Donald Trump, I'm assuming, but we'll have to see where she goes with that. And whether Kelly would agree they're morally corrupt. That'll be interesting. And then the second question is going to be, the religious right always seems to want to control people's choices. Why? She's calling you a fascist, Kelly. No, I'm just kidding. We'll see where that goes. Can we start with Kelly? Would that be fair?
I don't mind starting with Hertzey. That's fine with me. No problem. I'm more of a counterpuncher anyway.
All right. Hertz, do you want to go first with your question to Kelly? I'm going to get the timer started. One moment.
Besides, it's polite to allow women to go first, right?
There you go.
That always makes me curious because everyone's like, well, it's polite for the woman too. And I'm like, we are just human. There's no major differences between the two genders.
Yeah, like a cultural thing. You guys are starting right away.
I find my wife to be very different than me.
Well, people can have different opinions and such, but, I connect with my male coworkers and I connect with my female coworkers on sometimes very similar issues and topics and such.
Yeah, in that way, sure. Yeah, I agree.
I was going to say, society has groomed us to have certain expectations.
So this thing's going to go crazy if we let it.
Sorry.
All right. Question number 1. Although that question seems like that might even be okay, if we have time, we're going to throw in the do genders exist biologically debate.
Oh, Lord.
I don't think either of you want to have that one, so that's fair. How are Christians able to throw themselves, in the political sense, behind those who are morally corrupt? That's Hertzey's question to Kelly.
And admittedly, as this is, I don't want to take religion as just Christianity, but because we have theocracies in Saudi Arabia and in different parts of the Middle East, I know Egypt is having some of their own questions about this. So, they have to have some of these same corrupt individuals where this corruption is coming out. And my question is, as a religious person, how do you look at someone who has these morally corrupt, and admittedly, Roy Moore is an easy subject. How does that work?
Well, let me start off though with the Bible verse that I have been reading lately. It's from Hebrews 13, verse 14. It says, "For we have no continuing city, but we seek one that is to come." What I believe is that we try to make the best of what we have here. And if you ask me why I could vote for somebody who's morally corrupt, I guess I would respond is that's the only choice I have. All are morally corrupt according to God's law. And it's not the Ten Commandments. Me and Robert were talking about that before he came on. It's really more what Jesus said. He said to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor like yourself. If we actually did that, we wouldn't need a police department all throughout the world on the our planet. We wouldn't need a police department. We wouldn't need an army. We wouldn't need any of those things. Because if you love your neighbor like you do yourself, then you're not going to steal from them. You're not going to try to take their property. They're not going to do any of those things. And you're going to be more in the realm of grace about, like the war that happened in the early 90s. One side said, well, this is my oil field. No, it's not. It's my oil field. If you can say, well, you know what? You're my neighbor. Let's just share it. If that was the position of politics, then we wouldn't have what we have now. But obviously that's not the case, because the only option we have is humanity, and humanity is corrupt. And all you got to do is look at history, and you see that's the case. Whether you look at the church or whether you look at governments that rejected the church, they all have the same problem. They have a human running it, and the human is corrupt in at least a minimal way. So to answer your question, Hertzey, in another way, let's get off of that for a second. But when I go to vote for somebody, I'm going to look at what they've done in their life, and as best I can figure it out, then that's gonna influence my decision. But if you ask me, for example, if I voted for Trump, I would tell you, yeah, I did, because at one point I did decide I wasn't going to. When he got off the bus and said those things, that was out of the ballpark for me. That was something that just I could not believe my ears, what was coming out of his mouth. So at that point, I had said, okay, I told my wife I'm not voting for him. She got mad at me because she's more political than I am. But anyway, I said I'm not voting for him. I just, that kind of language, I was in a locker room for a long time as a hockey player, and I wasn't a Christian then, but I don't remember anybody with that vile an attitude, even in a locker room. But let me tell you why I voted for him. You gave me what choice? As the Democratic Party, I'm not talking about you, Hertzey, but as the Democratic Party, what choice did you give me? I'm pro-life. And you listen to Hillary Clinton's comments that she said about babies. They don't have any rights whatsoever. Supposedly, you can even up to the 8-month head coming out of the womb.
I was going to say that technically is a fetus, not a baby, because, and it's true, it's until it can survive outside, no, it doesn't have rights, according to the U.S. law.
Okay. Well, yeah, by the Supreme Court. Supreme Court also in the 1950s said that people that have a higher level of melanin in their skin were only 3/5 of a human being. So Don't tell me about the Supreme Court, because I don't think they're supreme. I think they're men and they make mistakes, and they made one in 1972.
Okay.
That's kind of got onto abortion then, which I don't think that was really the question.
Well, no, because
Yeah.
I do have this one. So it does kind of lead into, because the next question is, what are the limits of this? If you had, we'll take again Roy Moore, because admittedly he's sadly a great subject for this. If you take Roy Moore, a man who the common knowledge was at 30 years old was looking at 14-year-old girls for courtship, and let's be honest, courtship meant that he was going to try to marry them. But then you have, we'll say, the perfect candidate, except for that pro-life, except for they are not pro-life. They state that a person can choose. Is that the limit?
As I said, it's not an easy decision, because you say how can a Christian vote for somebody who's immoral? Like I said, I got no choice.
So,
no matter who I vote for, they're not perfect.
No,
and
but would you vote for Moore? Yes or no?
I don't know. That would be a tough one.
And I'm going to also add.
I would probably try to find a different option. Let me give you an example. In 2008, the people running was Obama and McCain. Mm-hmm. I voted for a third-party candidate because McCain got on a political show. It was CBS's Face the Nation, and they asked him on 3 separate times whether or not he would appoint judges that would try to overturn Roe v. Wade, and he wouldn't answer the question. He tried to play gray area. I'm not gray area on that, so I didn't vote for either one of them. So there's times when you can make another choice. Is that choice going to win? Probably not. But I'm not going to put my vote behind somebody like that.
All right. So
I'm not going to vote for Obama because he's not pro-life. So that's where my stance comes from.
Okay.
And
so
those instances you're talking about, Hertzey, those are everywhere. You're taking on Roy Moore in your state. You had a senator that was groping women on a regular basis.
And then we told him to resign, and he will not be elected again.
And that's good, but a poll was taken recently, and the majority of Minnesotans didn't think he should have resigned.
I actually was curious to see what the ethics committee would have done with this had it been able to play out. Mm-hmm. But in the end, he needed to resign, I
agree, and I say the same thing for anybody who does that. If they're not going to respect... If they're not, like I said...
If they're not going to respect a person's autonomy?
I'm sorry?
If they're not going to respect a person's body autonomy?
If they're going to do things like what those two did...
Which would be disrespecting a person's bodily autonomy.
You're trying to venture into abortion. And
actually, no, I'm just clarifying that the person has the ability to say, you can and cannot touch me.
Yeah, unless, I guess it's up for debate on that. I mean, if you come over and give somebody a hug...
The person can say no.
Sure, if they say leave me alone, don't touch me, then you got your answer. Don't touch me.
Yeah, which is why I usually ask before I give someone a hug, especially if I don't know them.
I don't know. I hug people when I meet them. Unless they tell me, unless they're like backing away, I hug people when I meet them because I'm not meaning anything other. I'm not meaning anything by that other than I'm just trying to show them that I have affection for them in a way that's just friend.
Let's go back. So
I hug men and women both, so it's not that. So you have to take that into account. There are instances.
Can we go back to the question?
Go ahead.
Can we go back to the question? So I want to give you a scenario because, extremes can happen. You do have to vote in this scenario, and you do have 2 candidates. There is no other options, and you actually have to vote. So we already know that you do have your one big issue, and we'll say that this person is great. The person who's pro-choice, everything else aligns perfectly. I'll even give that they haven't given a answer on pro-choice or pro-life. They've kind of skirted the issue. So, and you have Roy Moore. Would you vote for Roy Moore? Yes or no?
And before you answer that, Kelly, sorry to cut you off, but just to let you guys know, that is the 10-minute mark. We got 5 left on this question, and then we'll go to Kelly's question.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I probably wouldn't vote for either one. I would probably choice not to vote.
So it really does. So basically, you just be like, absolutely not, even if it was a forced decision.
Well, I don't think we are forced to vote, are we?
No, but in the example I was giving, you would have to vote. So it would be a forced.
That's a contrived example, Hertzey, so I don't really think that deserving of an answer.
Well, I think that, the idea of debate is to explore, what your opinion is. And if you were
I think given that part, but in the situation you're giving me no choice.
You have a choice. You have a choice between two candidates.
And a choice of somebody that's afraid to give an answer on the subject, maybe because they're in Alabama, and Alabama's a very conservative state. Maybe they're afraid to give their answer. I wouldn't vote for them just like I didn't go vote for McCain.
I was going to say, voting is a private thing. Nobody is supposed to be able to see your vote. People got in trouble when they were tweeting pictures of their voting card.
But I see it. And the way I feel about my theology, God sees it. So I'm not going to vote for either one of them.
Okay.
They're both at a level of moral questionable that I can't vote for either one. And as I said, nobody's perfect, but you have to try to vote for the best one. And if this guy's doing what they said he did, and apparently there's plenty of people accusing him of it, and there's people that said he couldn't go into a certain mall or something. So it appears to me that at least the people on hand were pretty convinced of what he did and pretty convinced that they didn't like it.
And the mall is interesting because I actually tried to see if I could fact check that, and it's actually a pretty gray area. Supposedly the guy could not remember, the manager at the time could not remember, but then he's also 80-something years old, and it was 30 years ago.
Yeah, it is a long time ago. That is one thing to take into account. People do change over time, but obviously the people in Alabama decided that they didn't want him representing him by a pretty slim margin, but they did. And as a red state, to go into politics, as a red state as Alabama is, then I'm going to go with what they thought and decide that this guy was probably a creep. Not that I particularly support the other guy, but like I said, I wouldn't have voted for either one of them. And I did that. In 2008, I voted for, I can't think of the guy's name, but he was ambassador to the UN under Reagan. I voted for him. He had no chance of winning. But I'm not going to go in and vote. I wouldn't go in and vote for either one of those two.
Okay.
So if you were to if I was trying to explain my political stance, so to speak, it would be pro-life. And
that's pretty much your only stance from what it sounds like.
I mean, there's other things that I care about, but that's the main one. There's other things that are important to me, but that's the main one. So when somebody says that they're not going to support that, then they're not going to get my vote, regardless of what party it is. That doesn't matter. And there are a few pro-life Democrats that are around. They don't get much publicity because the Democratic Party's kind of invested in that. But if it came to the point that a Democrat was running and they were pro-life and a Republican was running and they were supported abortion, then I'd vote for the Democrat.
Exactly. How does that single?
I agree with in his platform, so to speak, but that would be the one. That's determining. Or if he had a lot of things, other things that I didn't agree with, then I probably wouldn't vote for either one of them.
I guess the single issue for me is it doesn't work because there are a broad spectrum of issues, and it's one of those where understanding where I have to compromise.
Well, in the political realm, Hertzey, I think that's what we have to do because I haven't. Honestly, the reason why I read that verse is because as a pro-life person, there hasn't been a single president yet that actually fulfilled his promise on what he said he was going to do. There hasn't been one yet. So I vote for him because, I got no choices. But as I read, I'm looking for a continuing city, and it's one to come. What happens here in Washington, D.C. or Sacramento, the capital of my state, that they dictate what I'm supposed to do, in Pyongyang, what North Korea, they could dictate what the people are supposed to do. Those are cities that are run by men, and they're corrupt. I'm waiting for one that's run by somebody who isn't corrupt.
If I can stop you right there, it seemed like the focal point of that question was on abortion, which is appropriate because up next we have 15 minutes for the conservative question of the liberal on abortion. Why is this genocide allowed? And that's directed at you, Hertzey. You support genocide.
Which is an interesting piece. Kelly, I do have one very quick question that I hope has a very quick answer. Who is this genocide against specifically? Because are we going with a particular race or a particular area, or are we going against genocide against babies in general? Because then I'm wondering why we don't have, police taking the pregnant women to the clinics that would be then state funded, which they are not.
Well, clinics are state funded, but the word genocide may not have been the best one to choose because that kind of associates itself with race.
Yes,
so that may not be the best word to choose, but the same question still stands. Why is it legal?
Why is it legal? Well, because I'm not going to convince you that a fetus life, but we do have to note that a fetus cannot survive on its own. It is fully dependent on its mother's body, unlike something that has been born. And even those sometimes have issues, but we are specifically looking at the fetus before it is born. Even if a fetus was alive, the right to life does not imply the right to use somebody else's body. People have the right to refuse to donate their organs. There's a whole story about a girl who refuses the right to her body being used to help her sister. The right to life also doesn't imply the right to live by threatening somebody else's life. Bearing children is a concern. And the right to life is, at the end of the day, not a right to have someone else's will imposed upon your body. And one of the interesting parts for me is a fetus cannot survive on its own.
Well, that's not true, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I have personal knowledge of someone who had a birth because drugs, and it was at the 5th month, which is legal to kill the baby. And that baby is alive right now as a young lady. She's 21 or 2 years old, and she's perfectly functional.
Did you know that at 20 weeks?
Let me finish. The idea that this sounds like some sort of growth that you're talking about. It's a person, and that person is viable even up to the 4th or 5th month. They're viable, and even before that, Hertzey, they're still a person.
Are they?
In the Bible it says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." It's Jeremiah chapter 1, verses 5 through 7. "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you. I ordained you a prophet to the nations." He's talking about Jeremiah. But in God's eyes, that is always the case. It's a person. And if you look at DNA from the start, it's a person and it's alive. So
in the book of
go ahead.
In the book of Exodus, though, it does actually indicate a fetus really doesn't have the same legal status as a person. Chapter 21, verses 22 through 23, the verse indicates that if a man pushes a pregnant woman and she then miscarries, he is required to only pay a fine. Now, if this was considered a full person, he would actually be punished much more severely, as though he had taken a life.
Exodus, what was the chapter and verse again? I think I recognize that one.
Chapter 21, verses 22 to 23. It's also interesting that the Bible itself never actually mentions abortion, despite the fact that women have been looking at this as an option since the beginning of time. I mean, Where
would you see that? The Bible doesn't mention it. Where else in recorded history is that shown? I'm not asking the question as a sarcastic thing. I don't know. I haven't seen that.
Now, granted, this is the Wikipedia, but the practice of abortion has been known since ancient times in the Greco-Roman.
Oh, well, yeah, the sacrifice of kids was going on in Jericho.
And real quick, I'm gonna pause everybody's time just because I know Kelly, you were looking for verses, and Hertzey, you were looking for Wikipedia stuff, and it just seems fair.
I was gonna say I'm used to doing something live, so I'm totally fine with the us.
Oh, okay. But I'm gonna give everybody a second just to look up their stuff, and then I'm gonna grab a cup of coffee, and I'll be right back. Is that cool?
Coffee, jealous.
So I assume we paused there for a second?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. Right. I'm gonna look that first up, and I'm familiar with that one. And interesting. It's a good point.
And I believe we left off at Hertzey. You were bringing up a verse to Kelly, and Kelly, I think last thing you had said, or you had asked, what are you talking about, you crazy atheist lady? That's not a practice throughout history or throughout the Bible. And I'm starting the time right here with Hertzey's answer.
So looking at this article, primitive cultures were.
Can I respond to that verse that you wrote? That you talked about, Hertzey? So the verse actually says, if people are fighting and hit a pregnant woman and she gives birth prematurely, that there is no serious injury, the offender must be fined whatever the woman's husband demands and courts allow. It's not an intentional act. So that verse doesn't apply really to what you're talking about, because it pretty clearly shows that it's an accident. It says if people are fighting and hit a pregnant woman it looks like that from the wording there, it appears to be an accident. So I don't think that really backs up what you're trying to say.
Well, does Exodus then have something for involuntary manslaughter?
Of course.
So what's the fine for that? Because the fine for that should be the same as the fine for this. If we're considering
involuntary manslaughter meant that you do something
by accident.
Well, no, that you didn't pre-plan it.
Okay, then accidental manslaughter. Do they have something for accidental manslaughter?
You've actually done something that killed someone, but you didn't plan on doing it.
So then I'll change it to accidental manslaughter. Do they have something for accidental manslaughter? Because again, that then needs to match what this is for it to be one.
The reason why you got onto this verse was because you were trying to say that it supports abortion, and it doesn't.
Well, I was going to say it definitely shows that it doesn't look at a fetus as the same thing as a fully formed human.
Show me where it says that.
Well, because you're saying, because you haven't given me a verse yet that says what accidental manslaughter is.
I don't know how that applies to what you're talking about.
Well, because you said it was an accident. He accidentally pushed her and accidentally killed the fetus, correct?
Well, no, actually, it doesn't say that. It says she gave birth prematurely. It doesn't say the baby died.
So if the baby dies, do they get more?
You're trying to put a Bible verse to me, and I looked it up, and it doesn't say that the baby died. So I don't know whether you intended to do that or not, but you're misleading.
Okay. Well, let's go to the factor that abortion has been attempted for years, millions of years.
Yeah, we fought and killed people in the worst for millions of years.
Humans haven't been around. The first recorded evidence of induced abortion is actually from the Egyptian Ebers Papyrus in 1550 BC.
Okay.
Many methods that were employed specifically by cultures that were non-surgical, things like strenuous labor, climbing, paddling, weightlifting, diving. Other techniques include irritant leaves, fasting, bloodletting, pouring hot water onto the abdomen, lying on heated coconut shells. And then these things developed as we learned more and more about the human body. In some places, you'd be tightening the girdle.
Sounds like real good stuff.
Well,
on people tightening their girdles so that they're going to kill the baby. That's not my question, Hertzey. My question is, why is it moral to kill somebody?
Well, you're not killing somebody. It's a fetus. It's not a person.
In California, because
and I can't convince you that it's not a life.
And his unborn child. He's on death row right now because he did that. He was convicted of double murder.
And when was he convicted?
Courts upheld that was a human being, which it is. And they put him in jail, which they should have.
And can I get that name again?
He's not a nice person, and he killed his wife and his unborn child. He's convicted for murder of both of them.
Can I get that name again?
Guy does the killing, it's wrong, and if a girl does it, it's not.
Can I get the name?
Yeah, Scott Peterson. He's on death row right now for double murder. He was a very evil person. Just watch his videos, watch his recording. When they ask him about his wife, he was
a not nice person.
Without feeling, he was a psychopath. But that's not the point. They convicted him of double murder because he killed his wife and his unborn son.
And just to let you guys know, we're right about the 10-minute mark here.
So the state of California has decided that in that case it was double. Now, an interesting piece is, did she want the child? Not him. Nothing about him. He is out of the picture right now. Did she want the child?
Well, we can't ask her now because she's dead, but she didn't abort it.
So my guess is this is something she wanted. So she wasn't going to go abort.
The decision of whether you want it or not, that needs to be made before you decide to do what you do to have a baby.
So you have to decide that before you have sex?
To avoid that. There is ways to avoid that.
Yes, and unfortunately they are used far too few in some areas because people don't know what they're doing. And then we'll also have people who will teach things that are unscientific and say things like condoms cause pregnancy.
Well, you don't hear me say that. The Catholics might say it, but you don't hear me saying that.
I was going to say
my point is, and if you're going to promote condom use to kids, for example, no, I wouldn't be in favor of that. I would be against it because all you're doing is telling them that sex is okay as long as you protect yourself, which it doesn't. Not from just pregnancy. Also,
so sex is not okay.
90% effective, or maybe even let's say they're 95.
With proper use, it's 99.
to not think I'm going to catch an STD, which are epidemic levels right now, Hertzey, because we've decided that God's ways are not the best ways.
So sex is not okay.
Inside marriage, it is.
So,
and if you look at what's going on and what is the present state of our society, it testifies to what God said. God said, you have sex when you get married. Don't have sex beforehand. That's called fornication. And don't commit adultery while you're married. And if your wife dies, let me just finish. If your wife dies, then if you have somebody else that's in the same position, then you marry them. If everybody followed that, and obviously they don't, but this was God's direction, and if all the people on the earth followed it, we wouldn't have AIDS, we wouldn't have gonorrhea, we wouldn't have syphilis. Any of those things. You can laugh if you want to, but that's a fact. We wouldn't have any of those things if people decided to follow what God's design was. That's a perfect example that He is the designer. He designed sex to work in a certain way, and when you don't use it that way, you have problems. That's a fact.
So leaving the factor that contamination can happen in other ways other than sex, if two people decide to get married and then decide not to have children, should they then not have sex?
No, it doesn't say that anywhere.
Well, you're saying that we have to wait until married. It seems like you're saying that we have to have sex to have children.
No.
Because it's a consequence of sex.
And the Bible doesn't say that. The Bible doesn't say that. It says for each partner to when in the marriage union, for each partner not to withhold their body from the other partner.
So is birth control withholding?
Just for, a lot of people think that, but it's not just for that. And the church has taught that before. I'm not saying it hasn't, but that's nowhere in the Bible does it say that. And it says the opposite.
It says that we shouldn't have kids.
No, it says if you have them, that's fine. If you don't want to have them, that's fine too. But just inside the marriage union.
So we have to get married to have sex. What about people who don't want to get married?
That's not the laws now, but if you look at the condition we're in right now, it would be a lot better off if we did.
I actually disagree because I do not want to get married, and I also want to have sex.
Well, you're risking the STDs then, and that's your choice.
I was going to say,
support here. See, if you think that I'm going to support some law that says that I'm not, I would not support that. But if I talk to someone, I'll tell them that's the best route because you avoid STDs that way, and no less than the CDC and the American Red Cross say the same thing.
How do you contract? How do you contract?
It says it. The CDC and the American Red Cross both have examples that back up the position.
I would love for you to send me those at some point.
I'll send them to you.
Okay. How do you contract syphilis and HP and herpes? Kissing. You can get those from kissing.
I'm not so sure.
You can get herpes from sharing a glass when you have a
and you can catch AIDS from needles too, but where did AIDS come from? Nobody knows for sure, but nobody knows for sure where AIDS came from and how it got started. But
I thought we had an idea as to where patient zero was.
Well, okay, that's debatable how it started. But what is pretty obvious that it's high majority in the homosexual male community. That's where almost all the cases are. Now, can they be passed from needles? Of course. That wasn't my
blood transfusions.
Sure, that wasn't my point. They start
and being born.
No. Well, yeah. If you have somebody that's practiced that, or even just did it once with somebody who did practice it, that's not my point, Hertzey. I'm talking about from the start. If you had start, granted the disease is around now. That's not my point. The disease is around now, and you're going to catch it, whether you have in marriage or whether you don't, because there's infected needles, there's all kinds of things. But my point was, if they would have followed it from the beginning until now, it wouldn't exist.
So I just looked up where AIDS comes from, and according to Google, it's from commies. So communists started AIDS.
I knew it was them.
I can't believe you guys couldn't.
Paranoia. I don't have my dice.
I can't believe you guys couldn't solve the abortion debate within 15 minutes. I mean, I don't know what's wrong with you. But we do have to move on to the next one, which just seems appropriate because this is kind of where this conversation was leading. Hertzey's question to you, Kelly. Okay. The religious right always seem to want to control people's choices. Why is that? And we'll get back to Hertzey's question here momentarily, but I want to take a quick break just to remind you that you can support us at patreon.com/right. Find out more about this broadcast at therighttoreason.com. Like our page on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at RightToReason1. Music for this production is brought to you by Jason Comeau from A Lost State of Mind. Learn more about his music at aloststateofmind.com. If you prefer to watch the show, you can check us out on YouTube. Also, let me know if you guys enjoy this kind of format, letting two other people talk while I moderate. We can do a few more like this. I'm just kind of trying it out. But for now, we're going to get to Kelly's answer to the question, why does the religious right control people's choices?
Just to clarify here, that doesn't mean only sex. This is also the Zion's Curtain in Utah. If you go to Muslim countries, they have plenty of rules about what a person can, what a woman can and cannot wear, what she can and cannot do. If you look at the theocracies of Christian religions, they had a lot of rules about what specifically women, but also men could and could not do. They seem to have a lot of control issues.
Well, if you want to criticize the Muslim societies, Hertzey, I'd join you. So I'm not going to comment on that because I'm as much against that as you are.
The Christian societies, though, had some of the same issues, though.
But and I'm going to talk about the Catholic Church for a second, what they may have put on people. I'm not interested in what Protestants may have put on people. Luther was anti-Semitic. I'm not talking about that either. I'm talking about what the Bible states. And that's what I'll defend, is what the Bible states. As far as what that is, there's rules of all kinds of things, Hertzey. Why is it the, quote, religious right is the one that is putting on the rules? Government is in place to put rules on people.
Actually, it was supposed to be religion in general. It was not supposed to be the religious right specifically. So this is a very broad brush of religion seems to want to control people and control their choices.
Well, a lot of them do. I'm not going to defend religion because I don't consider myself to be religious. I've got a relationship with Jesus Christ, and his how would I put it? His moral direction is grace, and I follow that. And when you're talking about rules, governments are in place to put rules on their society to try to benefit it. That's what I'm going to go to next. Government was put in place to try to have society operate properly, and there's laws. You're talking about the religious right. Okay, they have some, and I'm not saying that in the past, especially in Europe, they had some stuff going on there that was not right. There was governments dictating to people because, especially, as I said, the Catholic Church, they were all about money. They were going around with these indulgences, telling people to give them money so that their relatives could get out of purgatory. Well, nowhere in the Bible does it say to do that. But I'm not going to argue with you that didn't happen, because obviously it did. And now, Muslim countries are doing what they do. But I'm not going to – I would join you in the criticism of them, Hertz. So I don't think we really have much disagreement there. I join you. But I'm not going to defend them. What I will say is that what the government was put in place to do is to defend its people from, attack from the outside, try to promote the general welfare inside, and there's laws that come along with that. Murder. So you want somebody coming in your house, Hertzey, and trying to kill you? There's laws against that. So are you against that one too?
I'm not going to go there. So if we're going to go for the biblical specifics, because you say that you're not religious, but you do look to the Bible for your inspiration on rules for life, correct?
I do.
So some things that we're not supposed to do according to the Bible is cross-dressing. We're not supposed to do that.
Where does it say that?
I'm not Deuteronomy 22:5. So I'm not sure if that goes with pants.
Last one you quoted, Hertzey, was inaccurate. So I'm going to look that one up. Because last time you gave me one, it didn't say what you said it said. So it's Leviticus?
Deuteronomy 22:5. I do believe there's also a red tent issue that I'm supposed to go to 1 week out of the month. There's that. And also you're not supposed to touch the stuff that I touch if it happens to be the week that I'm on my period. They have some interesting rules. There's rules about mixing cloth. There's a lot of these rules, and it's one of those. It's like, should we start following these rules, because it's fairly controlling, and this was the biblical government.
Yeah, you're talking about the law, and if you want to go into the Old Testament, you have to keep something in mind, Hertzey. The Old Testament is a physical picture of a spiritual reality, and what was going on with the law was God's trying to show people, you can't follow this. and I'm bringing something around that you can follow because I'm going to. So I'm not saying that the Old Testament, as far as the history of it, is wrong. It's not. It's accurate.
So instead of giving them something that they can follow, he said, I'm going to give you this, but I know you're going to fail and mess up.
No, he's telling you ways to try to avoid it. When blood transmits diseases, I think everybody knows that. And he was trying to say and also he was trying to tell the men to leave the women alone for a little while. Let them have their peace for a little while.
So can I have that now? Because I would love to have a week off every month.
Sure.
Now, do I have to have a red tent outside, or can I have a room?
Well, again, I'm looking for this red tent thing that you keep talking about, because I said you did this to yourself, Hertzey. You gave me a verse and tried to tell me it said something when it didn't say that. So
are you going to bring that up all the time?
No.
Is that going to be our little thing?
For that reason.
Is that going to be our little thing here that we have? Is that the Bible verse? That would be really adorable.
I'm not going to go by what you tell me and look up what you said.
A woman must not wear men's clothing, nor a man wear women's clothing, for the Lord your God detests anyone who does this. I guess I should take off my leggings, because apparently I cannot wear pants. But then again, did they have pants back then?
Okay, yeah. It looks as though he doesn't want you wearing dresses and whatever they were considered to be man clothing at that point.
So does a kilt count as a skirt?
I don't know. I'm not going to wear a kilt. Although I am some from that area, I find that I don't think my legs are something that anybody wants to look at.
Because, I mean, I think kilts are awesome and wonderful, and if we suddenly can't have guys wearing kilts, I'm going to be really sad.
Cheesy sound effects. Sorry, guys.
Well, that's a personal opinion. I'll let you have it. That's fine.
Well, I mean, it's the question of what it comes down to this control again of what you can and cannot do, and some of their stuff gets really detailed.
Sure, and God was setting up a people that were supposed to follow his guidelines. Like I said before about sex, God was setting up a people to follow his guidelines. And what they were supposed to be, and they didn't do a very good job of it, what they were supposed to be was a testimony to the rest of the world that God is the one who designed things, and he knows how it works best. That's why he pushed people to do what they're supposed to do. Not in this particular instance where you're taking one verse and trying to make a philosophy out of it.
Why is this verse different than the others?
As in the sexual relationship, what he was trying to say, which STDs were rampant back then in the societies that were around them. You look at their sexual practices and STDs were rampant, and they were dying off because of them. What he was
they also didn't have condoms.
As an example to everybody else, they came to see, you guys are having these problems. Why not? Just like in the plague, the Jewish people were the ones that weren't affected by it. Everybody thought that the Jewish people were the one that caused it. But it was because God told them what to do with dead bodies. They're supposed to bury them, not leave them in the streets. So the Jewish people weren't affected by it. The Jewish people were instructed by the designer on how to do things. And some of them may seem odd for us at this time because we have different morals and different sets, like the dressing thing. But God said it for them because he wanted them to be different. He wanted them to be an example to the rest of the world that God has a designer. He knows how things works best, and he set it up that way for that reason.
I am really curious about this leaving dead bodies in the street.
That happened in the plague.
I was going to say, yeah, well, partially because there were, you had a house of 5 and 4 of them would die. It's a little hard to bury bodies when you have, 25% survival rate.
Once the plague started, then it's there. But the guidelines were when someone dies, you bury them and you don't touch the body.
And we're at the 10-minute mark, just to let you guys know.
And if that was carried out, then the plague wouldn't have happened.
I was going to say, you do know that also the Black Plague was spread because they were using I can't remember where this battle was, but there was a battle, and people who were infected with the plague on one side were then catapulted over the walls and used as biological weaponry.
Goodness, that's terrible. I hadn't heard that, Hertzey. That's horrible. Gosh, that was heinous.
How is the invention is the necessity is the mother of invention? I'm not saying it's not horrible, but it was clever.
I guess in a devious sort of way, yeah.
Well, they were at war. They were trying to get into this castle. They were going to use whatever methods they could. That helped spread the disease.
Well, yeah, but the reason why it came about was the infection part. But anyway, my point was that the Jews were the ones who were affected by it for the most part, And it was because God told them to not touch the dead bodies and to bury them, not leave them laying in the streets.
Sorry, I'm just trying to see if I can find. I was looking to say also rats were a huge part of that.
Oh yeah, sure.
I mean, I would actually say that the rats in their beds and such probably more of a spreader than the dead bodies.
Fleas as well, but it came from the infected dead bodies.
Well, the rats would have gotten it from other rats and the fleas, maybe eating some of the dead bodies, I guess. But then they would have bit the people who are laying in the bed with them. I don't know. The way my brain's logic's working, it sounds more like rats. Also, they had gotten rid of cats during that time, so
it's a cat problem. My cat would have been okay. We're both Hertzey, so I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Cats too. But I don't think that would have solved the problem of the plague.
Well, it would have stopped the rats, and if the rat is laying in bed with you, it's probably going to bite you or at least give you the fleas. And that's. I mean, have your cats ever had fleas?
Sure.
They are so hard to get rid of.
Oh boy, that's for sure.
And they spread a ton of diseases very quickly. So imagine not having any of the technology we have nowadays or any of the medicine we have nowadays, and you have to get rid of a flea problem in your home. It's impossible. You can't do it. So all those fleas are just going to keep propagating and propagating and spreading, and you have somebody come over and then they spread those fleas to their house, which spreads it to the other house. That's a lot faster than a dead body.
Well, yeah, but we're talking about where the disease originated from, but I think we kind of off topic there a little bit.
So God said that we had to have these choices, or that we had to have these rules.
Of course. All societies have rules and guidelines.
Well, yes, all societies, but again, some of these rules
some of them bad, some of them not. I agree with you.
So if these rules are supposedly coming from God and they're the not great ones, would that mean he was wrong?
Which one of the Ten Commandments would you not agree with?
Well, I'm assuming that Deuteronomy is.
Let's take 6 of the 10 Commandments. You don't like the first 4, I'm sure. But the second 6, which one of those would you object to?
Well, actually, I was going to ask, is Deuteronomy God's word?
Of course.
So the one about the cross-dressing.
Yeah. I don't.
So would God be wrong about that one?
I suppose I find it to be something that I shouldn't do because I'm giving off the wrong statement to somebody else.
Well, except for, again, we have the kilt question.
Maybe the dictation was don't dress up like a woman so that you can be attractive to another man when you're a man, because you're going to spread disease. All that's said there is about the cross-dressing part. It doesn't give any background information as to what the intent might be.
Which is curious, because he should make this clear as day as to why. Because, again, I have the kilt question.
Probably was then.
I mean, the kilt question stands very firmly in this. The kilt is, looks very similar to a skirt.
Well, in Scottish society, it's really a man's clothing. So societies change, and that one had this guideline.
So does God's word change with the society?
It can change based on what they want to try to do, but the guideline for then was the law, and the law was there for the people to try to follow, which they couldn't do, and we still can't. But that's not what it was about. As again, when you look at the Old Testament, you have to remember that's a physical picture of a spiritual reality. If you're going to try to say that
doesn't apply now.
God made you that you are, and you think you need to change to another one, the physical picture of that, the spiritual reality is that if you practice those things, just like if I practice adultery on my wife, then I'm doing things that are going to keep me out of heaven.
Does polyamory count as adultery?
Count on different this type of sex or this that. God has one that he says is good. That's the married relationship between a man and a woman.
Does polyamory count as adultery?
And by the diseases that I mentioned, it's obvious that he designed it that way. And he's trying to keep you not only healthy, he's trying to keep you mentally healthy as well.
Well, then why doesn't he have anything against the cold?
I'm sorry?
Why doesn't he have anything against the common cold? Because there's no rules that I can think of that stops the common cold.
Well, sickness is sickness. It's not something
or cancer.
You do. Again, sickness is sickness. It's not something you intend to do.
Well, you don't go into a sexual relationship with someone with the intent of getting an STD. Go in as safe as you can.
If I can stop you guys, we're actually 2 minutes over time. I was looking for a good moment to interrupt there, but you guys are really going back and forth, and I think at some point someone brought up cancer. So that's probably a good point to stop.
Okay, Okay, I'm with you on that.
And that was
you'd
totally.
You'd think it'd be somewhere around STDs, but I'm like, no, that's perfect for our listeners. All my listeners have STDs. So the final question is to you, Hertzey.
Yes.
In terms of making your political decisions, where do you get your morals from to make those decisions?
From cheese. I get them from cheese.
I would say that it was probably Swiss because your morals have holes. That was,
I can have a lot of fun with those holes.
I thought that was okay.
Sorry, last one.
Also,
good.
I could say it's brie because it's malleable. It's something that I can look at and go, after further investigation, that's not a good thing. We're not gonna let that slide anymore.
Okay. So where do those arrive?
Study. My parents actually were a huge part of that. And it's interesting because unfortunately, to a point, unfortunately, I did grow up Catholic. Roman Irish Catholic in a rather odd church, where the morals I learned from that church was politics, internal church politics can ruin almost any fun. So I really didn't get a great moral education from there, but I was talking to my sister the other day, and my sister is also atheist, and she's raising my nibbling, her child, with no religion. And they are 3 years old in February. So cute. And he said something. She said she was talking about this thing they were doing where they were going to start giving the toys to other kids because he has a lot of toys, and it's time to cleanse. And they told my sister and her husband, they told my nibbling, excuse me, that they needed to get rid of 5 stuffed animals to give to other kids. And the nibbling turned to them and he goes, I'm going to give 10. And I'm looking at this situation and I'm like, this 3-year-old has not had a single religious thing in their life. And they're already that charitable. That's wow. That is awesome.
Well, they've obviously taught him to share. That's a good thing.
Yes, and it's one of those where a lot of those kind of things don't come from any religious order. They come from, your teachers, the teachers that he has in his childcare. It comes from, his mother, who I definitely know. My
point with the question wasn't in particular that atheists can't have morals, because you won't hear me say that. Obviously,
but where do I get them?
There's other ones. I have friends. Robert took his daughter to a concert, and I thought it was a great thing to do. That's a great deal because he's taking his daughter to culture. So you're not going to hear me say that morals can't come from people, regardless of what they might think. What I'm talking about is where the morals come from and how a politician. Let me give you an example. So a politician gets elected, and let's say the district he got elected from doesn't particularly want pot sales happening in the community. And he goes to D.C., let's say he's a congressman, and his political party says that they want to promote marijuana usage and pot sales because it's going to bring the government money, and we all know the government loves to have money. So now he's in a position. His people that elected him told him, we don't want this. The party that he got elected to says, no, we're going to vote for this. And does he base his morals on those things? Or does he base his morals on the fact that he looks it up, as you implied? He looks it up, and I can read to you if you want me to, what the detrimental qualities of marijuana usage are, not the medicinal, but the recreational, detrimental applications of marijuana are. Does he look it up and decide on his own morals? Based on the fact that let me make this last point. Based on the fact that he's been elected to try to give his constituents the best environment to live their life in. So which moral does he take?
Well, I have a clarifying question with that. Okay. Are those detriments better or worse than the detriments of alcohol?
I don't agree with either one of them. So I just pick more marijuana because it's one that's going on right now. I don't think. Let me rephrase from alcohol, okay? Because me and Robert had this discussion. I'm not saying that people couldn't have a glass of wine with dinner. And Jesus made water into wine in John chapter 3. So obviously he doesn't have this big thing about alcohol. But alcohol and marijuana are two different things. Medicinally, there are some purposes for marijuana, and that's fine. But that's not what we're seeing right now. We're getting it so that people can use it recreationally. And it's twice studies show twice as dangerous when it comes to lung cancer than cigarettes are. And we're trying to eliminate cigarette usage. So these things are what I'm talking about. And not to go down the road on what I told you, I can show you exactly where it is from JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association. It's on a string that I've got going with Robert. And where is this guy going to do his morals from? Where does he get them?
So God's okay. God's okay with alcohol.
Does he decide it? Alcohol is not detrimental to your health in small amounts. Marijuana is a cancer-causing agent for lung cancer.
So does the amount of marijuana ever factor into this?
I'm sorry?
Does the amount of marijuana factor into this?
If you smoke it regularly, yeah, just like cigarettes. Okay. It's twice as likely to cause lung cancer.
What if you ingest it?
Well, I don't think most people take it that way. I think most people smoke it.
You would actually be very surprised about that.
And do the study on the ingestion part. No, I didn't.
Okay, so because
they're not smoking, because that's what most people do with it.
Well, that's what we know most people do with it. It's also the easiest way to do it if you're trying to do it in a state where it's not legal. Now, I've actually been to a state where it is legal and was able to go into a store, and the amount of ways to ingest it are huge. I mean, it's its own industry.
And obviously that part wouldn't cause the lung cancer, but it causes birth defects as well. And that's whether you smoke it or whether you eat it, either way.
And that's if you do it when you're pregnant. And you also get birth defects if you have alcohol when you're pregnant.
Of course. I'm not one that supports alcohol. I'm like I said, if you want to have it with dinner as an aid to digestion, the Bible says that's fine. But it
alcohol
also says
is an aid to digestion?
Also says don't be drunk with wine. And they're talking about a continual thing. You know, Jesus made water into wine at a wedding party, and it said the people were well drunk. If on occasion, like special occasions like that, you know, maybe that's okay. I don't know. I'm not going to promote it because there's lots of people that have struggles with it. But I don't anymore. As far as that goes, I see that the two are different, because if you look at the article, and I'll send it to you, I'd be happy to send it to you.
Go ahead.
There's lots of detrimental effects of marijuana. It has a few medicinal purposes, and if that's all it was, then we wouldn't be having this discussion. But that's not what it is it? It's being promoted now as recreational usage, and it's just the government promoting something that they know is detrimental to your health, just like if they were promoting cigarettes. Because most people, Hertzey, you and I both.
Didn't they do that?
Most people smoke.
There was actually a lot of promoting of cigarettes for quite a while until it finally broke.
And before most people knew it was detrimental to your health. But even now, they're still, it's still around. They haven't outlawed it. But me and you both know that they're trying to reduce the usage of it because it's not healthy.
So we know that
smoking marijuana, it's not healthy. So my point is this.
Okay, so smoking marijuana is not healthy.
How does he make his moral decision?
So
right, that's the question.
In all honesty, this is really becoming a marijuana debate, which I actually really don't want to have in this question, because we're just going to argue about whether or not marijuana should be legalized. I actually am for the legalization of it for a myriad of issues, which also includes our prison population. This also does come back to the control questions, though, but that's another piece.
The government is set to control things that aren't healthy for its citizens. That's what it's there for.
So it's going to control how many drinks I have?
Well, yeah, if you're going to drive afterwards, they're going to control that.
Technically, they actually don't control it. They do allow a bar to stop serving you, but that's about it.
If they catch you drunk driving, Hertzey, they're going to put you in jail and fine you. And they should.
But that's not stopping me from drinking to that point.
Well, they're not going to come over to your house and follow you around. They're going to put a law in place that you shouldn't drink and drive. Because when you drink and drive, you have the chance of killing somebody.
Anyways, so where would I get my morals in this case? We'll pretend I'm a politician for a moment.
Okay, pretend you're a politician. So in that instance, the situation I described, how do you base the way you're going to vote?
And we have 5 minutes remaining.
And again, we have to do the marijuana one.
That makes you feel happier. Make it cigarettes.
A person has the ability to make the choice. So yes, I would state that they should be allowed to choose whether or not they want to smoke with the facts in hand. I mean, to say that I don't want you to have the choice isn't a bad idea. People know that cigarettes are bad for them, and they still choose to smoke. And
what does it do to our healthcare system?
There are consequences to actions.
Sure are.
There's consequences to actions that
tobacco came
consequences
out.
to walking.
We know what we know about tobacco now. when it first started putting into cigarettes? Would you have promoted its usage? Would you have allowed it to be used? I wouldn't.
Allowed
I
or
would have voted
promote?
against it being legalized, and I would have made it a controlled substance because it doesn't do anybody any good.
Allowed or promote? There's two different.
I wouldn't have allowed.
That's two different
I would have made
things.
laws as the government's supposed to do. It's supposed to protect its citizenry from things they knows bad for them. I would have voted for a law against it, not to be allowed to be sold, because it doesn't do anybody any good, and it's detrimental to our healthcare system. Somebody that doesn't have them, and when our healthcare system gets to the strain that it's at right now with the cost, it's because people don't want to live a healthy lifestyle. They want to smoke cigarettes, they want to take drugs, and then people that want a universal health care, they expect me. And I talked to a friend of mine that's a Democrat, and he doesn't like Trump, he doesn't like this, that person, but he knows the healthcare system. He said, well, on the healthcare system, I'm with you, Kelly. He's a martial artist, why am I going to pay, me, who tries to live a healthy lifestyle, why am I going to pay a drug addict who won't get off drugs because they don't want to have continual rehab treatments that I'm going to pay for? Why should I do that? Why should we promote things that are against our healthcare system and makes it so everybody, including you and me, have to pay higher premiums on our healthcare costs because people want to do what's not healthy for them? And
Kelly,
this thing is a perfect example. Let me ask you this question. If you knowing what you know now, cigarettes were first proposed to be sold, would you allow them to be sold? Based on the conditions I just described to you.
Yeah. Because also getting old.
That's the question. Why? Where do your morals come from for that decision?
Do I get to answer now?
Sure, go ahead.
Because you've been talking a lot. So getting old is a symptom of life. People start having dementia and all these problems, and they haven't done anything to decide whether or not these problems are going to exist except be born and live. Illnesses happen all over the place. They happen sometimes for reasons, sometimes not really for any reasons. And so to state that every single decision, is going to cause massive problems is rather hyperbolic. There are people who smoke for 40, 50 years who never get lung cancer. But then and this actually is a thing, my godfather was a man who never smoked, ran marathons, ate incredibly healthy, died of stage 4 lung cancer.
You're not answering my question, Hertzey.
Where do I get my morals for this? From study and understanding that people are going to make choices.
To allow smoking. Would you allow it and have people die of lung cancer?
Not everyone's going to die of lung cancer, but I would still allow it.
But a lot of people die of smoking cigarettes from lung cancer. Are you okay with that?
I am going to allow their choice.
So that's okay with you? You're not going to try to protect your citizenry?
I'm going to allow them to make that choice. And I'm also going to know that making it illegal.
We only have a little bit of.
Okay.
We only have a little bit of time left, and you kind of.
I heard. I don't vote for Democrats because they can't make a decision like that.
No, we allow everybody else to make their own decisions.
Yeah, I know, and that's detrimental to our society, and that's the reason why we're in the condition we're in right now.
Well, we can move to Saudi Arabia and go for a theocracy.
I'm not going to defend Muslims. Rampant sexually transmitted diseases, lung cancer that you seem to be fine with, and increasing healthcare costs that's going to bankrupt our country, but you're okay with it. I'm not. I would have outlawed cigarettes at the start if I knew what the disease and what the condition it brings about to families. Families losing their father because he smoked cigarettes when I could have banned them.
Kelly, I have one question for you. Do you think that outlawing cigarettes would ever stop someone from smoking?
It would have made it a lot harder.
Do you think it would stop them?
You can't make laws to stop everything. We have laws against murder right now, but people still get murdered. But that doesn't mean we should take away the murder laws, are we?
People are still going to do it.
They still might do it anyway, but I'm going to put a law against it to try to dissuade them. And when they do it, I'm going to punish them.
And how are you going to punish them?
Well, at the very least, I'm going to put them away so they don't do it again.
So you're going to put...
And yeah, for me, that's when you take someone's life and you premeditate doing it.
For smoking. What are you going to do to punish them for smoking?
I didn't say that. I'm going to ban the substance.
So what's the punishment if they get caught smoking?
I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about
Except for that you say that you want to ban it. You say you want to get rid of it.
Yeah.
What is the punishment for somebody who smokes illegally?
Take away the cigarettes from them.
Okay, then they go get more cigarettes.
Take those away from them, too.
Are you going to have somebody watching them and babysitting them?
No, because government can't do that. They don't have the population, and nor do I think they should. But when they are
We could have cameras in everybody's house.
Taken away from them again.
We could have cameras in everybody's house. I mean,
You might.
Orwell had a great idea with that.
I don't promote that. And I think.
But then how? So you're just going to continuously take them away? I mean, do you have somebody stop in and check on them to make sure they don't have cigarettes?
Sure.
I mean, it sounds like overregulation of what a person decides to do with their body.
It's a public health issue, and you're not. If you're referencing abortion, you're not doing what you're with your body. You're killing an infant.
I was so not going there.
Okay.
Just so you guys know, we're pretty much out of time, so you might want to wrap up this one.
Kelly, I think you kind of have a ping for abortion where everything kind of has to circle back.
And it might. If you didn't mean that, Hertzey, then my apologies.
Actually, hilariously, I was thinking about when you were hugging people who don't want to be hugged and may not have the strength to tell you I don't want to be hugged.
You made an assumption there, Hertzey. I don't do that.
You were saying earlier that you hug people, and not everyone has the ability to say no.
I know.
We'll listen to this episode later and find out.
We will, and you'll find that I said exactly what I said just now.
Sure.
On his deathbed, a lifelong Republican supporter suddenly announced that he was switching to the Democrats. "I can't believe you're doing this," said his friend. "For your entire life you've been a staunch Republican. Why would you become a Democrat right now on your deathbed?" And the former Republican, as he lay dying, he said, "Because I'd rather it was one of them that dies instead of one of us." Huh? There we go. All right. I figured I'd try to lighten it up. Hey, thanks guys for that. I think that was a lot of fun. It was nice.
It was spirited. I appreciate the conversation, Hertzey. I hope I didn't offend you in any way. I wasn't trying to.
Sweetie, you're going to have to try a hell of a lot harder to offend me.
Okay.
Stronger people have tried.
So thank you both, and if you guys wouldn't mind letting us know how we can find more about you one more time, just in case anybody forgot from the beginning. Hertzey, did you want to let us know about Atheist Talk?
Absolutely. Atheist Talk, again, streams live on 9:50 a.m. They have an app, and you can stream it on the web, or you can subscribe to us in iTunes, Google Play, and I think we're on Stitcher now. You can contact us at radio@mnatheist.org, or you can look at our Facebook, Atheist Talk. If you want to get a hold of me personally, it would be hertzey@gmail.com.
Kelly Clemenson, how can people find you and learn more about your project?
It's called the Areopagus Project. I will post that on One Robert Strings if you want to look there. It's a project I started about 10 years ago. It's a street ministry where I talk to people about salvation and an afterlife, and as I said before, a continuing city that doesn't go away. But you guys can contact me there. I'd be happy to have a discussion with you, like we did Hertzey today. I like talking with folks that are either unsure about whether God exists or whether they're sure that they don't, maybe doesn't. So I'm open for that. Only like to have polite conversations. Hopefully that's what we did today. Got a little heated, a little passionate, but that's okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where you contact me at. My email's on there as well. My email is desiretheword, not world, but word, @hotmail.com. You can send me an email there if you'd like. Just go on to my Facebook page as well. That's Areopagus has got a Facebook page, but so do I. My name is Kelly Clemenson. Last name is spelled Clemensen. Go ahead on to Facebook and friend request me. I'd be happy to become a friend of yours.
Cool. Thanks, guys. And I'll include all your links in the show notes. So if any of the listeners are wanting to find out more, they can just click from there. Thanks a lot. I appreciate both your time. I think at one point, Hertzey, you were responsible for genocide, and Kelly, you were a sexual assaulter from hugging people. So you guys both have...
I have the bigger crime.
Hertzey and Kelly were great, and I really appreciate them fighting for our pleasure like two caged animals. Speaking of contributing to the broadcast, I'm glad you brought that up. Sure, I can tell you how you can support us. It's at patreon.com/right. You get multiple rewards for your help there, even given just $1. Patreon.com/right. Next week, I have the honor to be speaking to the hottest new author. His book is blowing up He's already been on Seth Andrews' Thinking Atheist show, amongst multiple others. So really looking forward to next week. You might remember Dr. Daryl Ray from Secular Sexuality talking about him in our episode on infidelity. I think it was called Why We Cheat. Daryl was talking about where our primal instincts originate and how these rudiments of our psychological makeup also translate into religious conceptions of God. He then recommended this name, Dr. Hector Garcia, the author of Alpha God. Well, shortly after that conversation with Daryl, another friend of the show, Anthony Magnabosco of Street Epistemology, I know you guys love him, he calls me up and says, hey, you have got to read this book, man. So I did, and now I have the chance to speak with Dr. Garcia and give you folks a taste of this fantastic work on, as I quote, the psychology of religious violence and oppression. That's the subtitle of Alpha God, and that's next week. Between now and then, remember that you have the right to reason.